What a weekend it was. A good thing if you're a Michigan State fan, and a really bad thing if you're a Michigan fan. 5 out of 6 years now, Michigan State takes the cake. It's 4th and 1 Michigan recruiting. Tom VanHaaren, Brad Galli. What a wild game to watch.
Yeah, that was pretty incredible. And with that kind of game, it's usually pretty close, and it was in the first half, but then it was just a blowout.
Unbelievable when you consider how close these teams really kind of were at the beginning of the season. It looked like Michigan State was going to be the team on the downward end of things, and Michigan was on the rise. Not the case Saturday.
They've flip-flopped. It's been interesting. Like you said, in the beginning of the season, everybody was saying Michigan State's in for a tough run, and they've just progressed and gotten better each week. And Michigan, they're having struggles. The offensive line, I think, is the biggest one right now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's been interesting to watch.
The lack of protection Devin Gardner had was alarming. We'll get to that freshman line later in this episode. But Tom works for ESPN, part of their Big Ten recruiting insider access. But you can also follow him on Twitter at TomVH with fantastic updates on your favorite players coming into Michigan, Michigan State, and all around the Big Ten. We'll start with first down. Big updates, because this was a big showcase for both of these teams and ended up working in Michigan State's favor. Who was there? What have you heard? What did they think about the game?
They had a lot of kids there. There were some kids that both schools are in on, some just Michigan State. ESPN 300 wide receiver Jamil Kamara, he's just looking at Michigan State, but he said what a lot of recruits felt. He came in with Wisconsin and Pitt in his top group. After the visit, Michigan State's in his top group now. And that was kind of the sentiment from everybody. In that kind of game, like I said before, usually it's a close game, a rivalry game, but when a team wins so definitively, it impresses the recruits. It shows them a lot. So a lot of them came away, the 2015 in-state kids, a lot of them came away impressed. Tyreek Thompson from Detroit, he was there. John Kelly from Oak Park, he was there, defensive back. Keonta Stallworth and David Mormon, 2 offensive linemen, both were there as well. So this game for me, it was big to watch those 2015 in-state kids to see how they came away from the game, and they all came away impressed.
Impressed with Michigan State and not with Michigan.
Right.
How much of an impact does that have on Michigan when they send out tweets or they talk to you or you hear things about their experience there when these are targets for Michigan?
Yeah, that's a good question. And with this type of game, I've said it before, I think typically with a recruit, one game isn't going to affect the process.
But you did say last week an in-state game like this could.
Right, and I think this type of game, the way it ended, the way it happened, I think it can have a huge impact now, because you look at what you said before, Michigan State has now won 5 of 6. They win this game in the way that they did, the fashion that they did. Recruits are starting to see and look at Michigan State and say maybe they are the better team right now.
It's interesting, especially like we said, that turn that began at the beginning of the season when Michigan looked like a top program. Again, quickly, that's changed. Second down, we'll talk about some of the big names here. Deshaun Hand, Malik McDowell, we talk about them seemingly every week, but when you put out the Twitter question Monday morning and said, hey, we're about to tape the show, what questions do you have? I think the first 5 answers were, what's the deal with Deshaun? What's the deal with Malik? Well, Malik McDowell's team, Southfield, out of the Michigan High School Athletic Association playoffs. They're done.
Yep.
So now you talked about last week his visits progressing once his team's done. That's happened now. What's the latest with him? What's the latest with Deshaun? More of the big names out there.
Yeah, Malik, I think he's going to start to take visits eventually. We don't know yet when those will happen, but he's been saying he wants to take visits to SEC programs, get down south and see some of those schools. Like I said before, though, I still think the 2 in-state schools, Michigan and Michigan State, I think in the end that's probably where he's going to end up. Family, staying close to home, I think those are important. And then Deshaun Hand, this weekend is a huge weekend for Florida fans and Michigan fans probably, because he's taking his official visit to Florida.
Yeah.
Everybody's watching what's going to happen, and of course he doesn't give anything away after the visit. I spoke with him after his Alabama visit, and I asked him who's had the best food so far on the visits, and he wouldn't even tell me that.
Jeez.
So, yeah, he keeps everything close to the vest. But after this visit, November 14th is when he makes his announcement.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a huge weekend for him. I do think that Florida has the chance to wow him. This is going to be a big game. I think they have a shot here. But who knows what could happen on the visit. Things can go wrong. Things can go very well. I think it's something that everybody's going to kind of have to sit tight and wait.
That shot clock is set now to that November 14th date. Has he said how he's going to announce it, where he's going to do it?
He's going to do it at his school. He's going to do a press conference. He wants his teammates around him. He wants everybody there that's helped him along the way. So he'll do it at his school.
Third down, moving along to next year. Obviously, the holes are there on Michigan's team. We've talked about them before. Impact players are, I think, what Michigan fans are screaming for, hoping for. When you see an offensive line that has a bunch of freshmen on it, well, maybe they're good enough to play. Clearly that's not the case this year. So of all the holes on that Michigan team, are there impact players next year that could make a big change in this Michigan team?
Well, we're talking about the 2014 class impact guys, but I think, like you mentioned, there's some offensive linemen that are already there that are freshmen right now, and I think that's probably where you're going to see a lot of the impact coming from, because if you look at the roster right now of the offensive linemen that Michigan has, there's a huge gap from the upperclassmen to the underclassmen. I believe, and I have to double check on this, but I believe that Michigan right now has 10 offensive linemen who are redshirt freshmen or true freshmen. So that's a big number, a big gap to have. Taylor Lewan and Michael Schofield, those are the seniors, and that's it. So I think as far as impact goes, I think that's where you're going to see the main impact. From 2014, guys, Jabril Peppers is obviously the main guy that everybody's talking about. I've said before, Michigan doesn't have a guy like him on the roster. His size, speed, what he can bring in the run game or run defense, he could help out on offense if they really wanted him to. So he's the main guy, I think, that you're going to see as far as instant impact. And then maybe Brian Monet, the defensive tackle from Utah. They don't really have anyone like him on the roster either. He's got a lot of versatility to him. He plays offensive lineman and defensive line. He'll be a defensive tackle for Michigan. He's a big body, a big, strong guy. So those two, I think, probably the main two that you could see instant impact.
We've talked about both of them before at length, and Peppers is obviously, like you said, one that the nation knows about. When Michigan fans are reeling watching this game, again, one of those Twitter answers we had was why? That was the big question so many people had. I think they look for that savior on defense or on offense that will help come in and make an instant impact, because if you look at it, people are afraid that the roster in place isn't going to get the job done. So you look at the Michigan State defense, they have playmakers. Can Peppers step in and be that guy? Clearly, many people think he can.
Yeah, and on the defensive side, I mean, it's not just one guy, but he's going to be a huge piece to plug into that puzzle of what Greg Madison wants. You're going to get some of the younger guys improved, some more depth. I mean, the defensive line has been an issue, getting a pass rush to the quarterback. If they land Malik McDowell, Deshaun Hand, those guys are going to be added to the mix. So I think the defense as a whole is going to get stronger. It's going to improve. And then you plug in a guy like Jabril Peppers, and it's just that much better. So
much talk about big names. Tom's up to date and has the inside access on all of them. But talked about Deshaun Hand, Jabril Peppers so many times on this show. Fourth down, we're going to move along to someone you say that's under the radar that people aren't talking about, but they should.
Yeah, I think Freddie Canteen, a wide receiver out of Maryland, he's been a guy that the whole way has been under the radar. He camped at Michigan. He earned an offer after camp and committed with his teammate. It just looks like he's got a lot of the skills and ability that he could succeed at Michigan. He's not the 6'4" deep threat guy that's going to go up and get a jump ball. He's a guy with crisp routes. He's got speed. You could put him in the slot. They don't really have a wide receiver like him in this class, and I think he's going to be a guy that can kind of work his way into the lineup, work his way into being a good contributor for Michigan.
Interesting stuff, as always, bringing insight to players that maybe not everyone has heard of. People have all heard of the Michigan offensive line. Moving on to our extra point. You just talked about it. It's extremely young. We all know that. Taylor Lewan, talking to him before the season started, he told me, hey, I came back to help this team win a Big Ten championship, to contribute to winning a potential national championship. That's not going to happen. But a big part of why he came back and why he was motivated as a captain was, hey, I'm going to lead these young guys next to me. We know they're young. Is there promise there? Should people be confident in what's to come?
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, 10 of them are redshirt freshmen or true freshmen, and with the offensive line, it's such a unique position that you can't just bring a guy in from high school and plug him in.
No.
There's a physical level, a strength level that a lot of offensive linemen in high school, they're just eating cheeseburgers and donuts trying to gain weight. You know what I mean?
That's so true.
So it's such a different position that it's going to take time for those guys to develop, and you've already seen Kyle Bosch, a true freshman, break through in the lineup, and I know the offensive line hasn't been doing well, but that's a good sign to see him cracking the lineup, getting reps. This is good experience for him for the future. They've gotten the guys that they want. I think that's a big key to this. Is they're recruiting and they're getting the guys that they've gone after. They've targeted the #1 targets, 2013, 2014. And it looks like 2015 they're going to do that as well. So there is definitely hope. It's just going to take some time for that offensive line to develop.
Let me spin something else at you, and this may put you on the spot. But on Twitter and even in the press box on Saturday, a lot of people said, well, there have been these big-time recruits, and it was actually asked to Brady Hoke as well, that you've brought in to this Michigan program that has made people think this is a program on the rise again, and rightfully so. They've won bowl games. They've gotten to a BCS bowl game in the Hoke era, which is still young. Can this coaching staff still get the job done, do you believe, I guess from an opinion standpoint and even maybe from what you've heard from a lot of recruits?
Yeah, I think from the recruit side, they're all in. Not to go back to an old saying under Rich Rodriguez, but
right.
They're bought in, and they believe that this staff is going to do it. And from what they've been told, and it's not really a sell from Brady Hoke. It's just what Michigan offers, what they believe they can bring to the program. You have to think too. A lot of these recruits, the Jabril Peppers of the world, they think that they can come in and help a team.
Right.
And which he can, 100% he can, but they think that they can come in and make a team better. So they're bought in. I do think that if the season, there's still a lot left in this season. Michigan still has to play Nebraska, Northwestern, you have to play Ohio State. Mm-hmm. There's still a lot left on this season. I think everything is okay in terms of recruiting right now, but if Nebraska, if there's a loss to Nebraska or Northwestern, the noise is going to start to get louder. And other coaches from other programs are going to start to come in and try to recruit those kids. So then I think that's where the problem comes in. You have to start to recruit those commits again and try to keep them on board. But, yeah, as of right now, I mean, like I said before, it's just going to take time. This was such a unique situation. I was actually talking to someone else about this before, that Brady Hoke came in with a roster that there was a lot of holes on it that didn't show right away. Right when they came in, they had a lot of seniors, they had some upperclassmen, they had Denard Robinson, and it didn't show right away to as now, right this season especially, a lot of those holes within the roster and within recruiting are starting to show up to where they're trying to recruit to build those numbers back up.
And I think a lot of people expected, okay, here they are, the success in the first season. Denard was kind of that stopgap where he was so talented, albeit he made mistakes, but he was so talented and kind of was an error corrector for everything else around him. All of a sudden, he's gone. Devin's good, but we can also see when there's not help around him, it's a struggling situation.
Well, and I think a lot of where the concerns come from is, like we talked about before, Michigan State, they started out slow, but there was progression. Mm-hmm. With Michigan, it seems like it's been a flat line the whole way, where there hasn't been a lot of progression. And a lot of that is, like we talked about earlier, the offensive line problems. It's not something that you can just start plugging guys in and hope for the best. You got to get those guys experience. You have to get them built up. So it's just going to take time, I think. I think they'll be okay. And a lot of the recruits believe that as well.
Good stuff. Michigan fans, not as patient.
No.
But have to be. Tom VanHaaren from ESPN, Brad Galli here. This is 4th and 1 Recruiting. We return every week on WXYZ.com, and you can follow Tom on Twitter at TomVH. Thanks as always, man.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching.